Welcome to JWL Sports, where we review all the best sports clips from around the world. Now, you're probably wondering, why should I watch over here instead of anywhere else? And that's because over there, they don't care about what you have to say. They say this all the time. They talk down to us. They think we're just a bunch of clowns on YouTube, Twitter. But I think it's the opposite. I think we know exactly what we're talking about. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. So we're watching a clip of First Things First, talking about the Texans and are they getting too much hype? Now, I have not seen this clip at all, but as I was setting it up, I did hear the first 2 seconds where Nick is about to say something that I am going to rip him to pieces over. We are about to expose him as such an inconsistent, whatever he's considered, an analyst, commentator, media personality, because what he's about to say is bonkers. So let's take a listen, and then we'll break it down from there.
In a division that every other team had their quarterback go down, and so they are going a long ways of sending Joe Flacco back into retirement, and what that was. Because if you remember, Week 18 was a playoff game, and Gardner Minshew has it down inside the 15 to beat them, and then to send them home. So I think the Texans are on the come. I think they're good. I like what they're doing. If I were a fan there, I would feel like salvation is here after 3 years in the wilderness. Are they real threats for the Arrowhead Invitational? I need to see a little more.
So just show up.
Okay, I'm going to let the whole clip play out more, but I just wanted to plant what I'm about to say about Nick. He tried to say that the Texans are not as good as we think they are, because they had a easier schedule last season, and that in their division every quarterback went down. Please tell me, what did the Broncos look like last season? Did they have a bad quarterback that they then had to bench and go get another one with a brand new coach? They did. Did the Chargers fire their coach in the middle of the season, also have a quarterback go down, and also have a disaster season? They did. Did the Raiders also have a quarterback go down and have to hire another coach in the middle of the season? They did. What do those teams all have in common? Oh, right. They're in the same division as the Kansas City Chiefs. It's weird that he doesn't recognize the benefit of that, or use that as an indicator to take away anything from the Chiefs. But when it's about another team, he wants to highlight that. Pretty weird, no? I mean, it's just so absurd to me how blind and biased you can be. Because I actually don't even think he's doing it on purpose there. I think he's just so lost in his own mind and his own obsessive fandom that it's parody at this point. I mean, it's comically absurd to me, because the Chiefs division has been a disaster, has been an absolute disaster the entire time that the Chiefs have been on their reign. Okay. They can't get the coaches, they can't get the quarterbacks. I mean, it's just what the heck have the Raiders done? What have the Chargers been able to do? They should have fired their coach 2 years ago. The Broncos can't get a quarterback. It's like, what are they doing? So it's just comically absurd to me. Okay? It's just comically absurd to me that he doesn't see that the Chiefs benefiting from that in any kind of way, and yet here he wants to highlight the Texans in that regard. And I agree with some of those arguments that he's making, but I also agree that the Chiefs have benefited. Just like how I've said Tom Brady benefited from the decades of awful, play from the Dolphins, the Bills, and the Jets. Those things matter. LeBron James was able to go to all those NBA finals in a row because the East was incredibly weak. It's never just this one thing. We always want to give all this credit to either the team or a player right now we're living in this time where everybody just wants to praise Patrick Mahomes and nobody wants to give any credit to Travis Kelce or Andy Reid or Tyreek Hill. They're just because they won without Tyreek Hill, they just think that Tyreek Hill had nothing to do with Patrick Mahomes' growth and greatness. It was just irrelevant to him, which is just comically absurd to me. They have one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL, if not the best in Spags, and I guess he just has nothing to do with it, considering they had a top 2 defense. So it just doesn't make any sense to me. So I just wanted to plant that flag in case any of these guys called him out for that. I don't think they will because they rarely do call out Nick for that type of stuff, but let's listen to the rest of the clip and then we'll break it down.
I need to see a little more.
They are
a little more. They think they are. I need to see a little more against a first place schedule and all of that.
They are absolute threats. All right. Now I've said it from the moment they got Stephon. I got the Chiefs and the Ravens on one tier, and right below is the
Ravens
Texans.
on the same tier as the Chiefs.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Where's the board?
Because if
Guys,
they kept running the ball, they might have won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But I've got the Texans right below them. But an elite team, absolutely. You mentioned the rankings of the offense and the defense. They're getting better. And every rookie, I've even said I want to see CJ do it for a second straight year before I crown him. But every quarterback in recent memory who has had a rookie year even close to his, Big Ben, Dan Marino, that wasn't really recent.
No.
Russell Wilson, Andrew Luck, Cam Newton, they all proved to be good quarterback, really good.
Justin
they didn't
Herbert
take a huge step back. RG3, but obviously injury had something to do with that. So if CJ is going to be this, they added Diggs to a receiving core that's already good. They got Joe Mixon. They add Daniil Hunter to a defense that's already good.
Jonathan
Will
Grenard.
Anderson's only getting better. What's not to like? And the coach, D'Amico Ryans, we've seen defensive players. Antonio Pierce, I know it's early with him, but Vrabel, guys like this have some success. So, Coach, I think they are elite, and they're right in that conversation with who's going to challenge the Chiefs in the AFC.
I thought what was most interesting is there's a team in Texas that said they were going all in, and there's a team in Texas that went all in. And what Houston did,
Taking shots
first
at
time in
Dallas.
history, right, where they added a 1,000-yard rusher, a receiver with 100 catches, and a defensive lineman who's had over 10 sacks, and he actually had 16.5 sacks. So you go add that amount of talent to the amount of talent that they had already, it's pretty significant. In the draft, they've got 9 draft picks. They've got the 12th most salary cap space, so they can still improve the team as cuts happen after the draft. So there's that opportunity as well. So all those things, to me, I think are great. And when you look at the division, I know that Nick is really high on
I'm not that high on the Jags. I'm high on the
He's
Trevor.
really high on Richardson.
Richardson.
In Indianapolis. He's obviously an emerging star with his 11 completions. So there's that. The Prince, we don't know where he is. Tennessee.
Right.
Make no mistake about it, Shane Steichen is for real. So if he can stay healthy and he's a pretty decent quarterback, Shane Steichen will maximize that. Make no mistake about that.
It's a
They're
new
trying
regime.
The head coach of the
Yeah,
Colts.
We'll see
Head
how
coach
that
of the Colts.
unfolds. But to Nick's point, you do have to pump the brakes because you don't know how the sophomore season's gonna play out. Everybody's studying the team. It's a totally different equation. I said this with Detroit. There's learning how to deal with adversity, and then there's learning how to deal with success. So how well they deal with success, and Detroit did a much better job than I anticipated. How well this team deals with success, expectations. Giants went to the playoffs a year ago and then had to step back. So
Well,
it's
that's
not
different.
uncommon to see it go the other way as well. Even
That's silly. We're gonna compare CJ Stroud to Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones also got injured. Which I'm not even trying to defend Daniel Jones, but they had backup of a backup of a backup quarterback. Jimmy Cutlets, Johnny Cutlets, Joey Cutlets, whatever the heck his name was. I don't even remember. So I mean that's silly to compare them to the Giants. That doesn't make sense. Quite honestly, I think the Texans. I don't want to say they're getting too much hype. I think they're getting the right amount of hype because I don't think anyone's saying they're the team to beat in the AFC because more than anything, the hardest part of dealing with the Chiefs at this point is just their experience. It's just that they've been there a million times at this point, specifically Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And of course, Travis Kelce and now Pacheco even and Rice. But Those are the main foundational components, and Chris Jones, and Spags. And that's the lack of experience that the Texans have. You know, they don't have that success. They don't know how to truly win. It's not to say that they're not capable of it. And I think the best thing that the Texans have done, and this is incredibly smart, and the smartest thing that they did, is they see all this hype around CJ Stroud, right? He had this great first season, one of the best, rookie seasons in the NFL. And what did they do? They said, let's support him even more, and let's make his second year easier on him. Rather than say, okay, you're this amazing guy, we're just going to have you lead the way now. They're like, no. Let's get you a running back who we know is going to get you yards on the ground to make things a lot easier, to get you, 2nd and 6, or it's a 2nd and 7, and now we hand the ball off, and now it's 3rd and 1. They made it easier. They said, let's go get Diggs. Let's get you another wide receiver to throw to. They doubled down on that, which is brilliant on their part. Brilliant. And again, you guys are probably going to get sick of this. This is the exact example that I used before, that I keep using, is that this is exactly what the Eagles did for Jalen Hurts. When he became the starter and was playing well, but obviously not this amazing level, they said, let's support him even more. They went out, they got A.J. Brown, and, it was a one-way ticket to the Super Bowl. And so I do think that there is a chance that the Texans can do that. To me, it really is going to depend on, of course, health, always the caveat of health, but also who C.J. Stroud ends up being. Was he more of a one-hit wonder? And I don't mean that like one-hit wonder in the sense of like he's just going to be a scrub now backup quarterback, but was this truly an indicator of what's to come? Or did he just have a great season? We've had plenty of quarterbacks have great seasons. Carson Wentz, Derek Carr, Matt Ryan. I mean, we've Cam Newton. We've had a lot of these quarterbacks play some pretty good seasons. Either one amazing season, surrounded by a couple pretty good seasons. Like, we just don't know. So I'm always the one who's always pushing caution on these players. I'd rather be right than early in a lot of ways, right? I don't feel the need to just be like, the Texans are gonna win the Super Bowl this year. Just so if they do, I could say, I told you. Remember that video I made back in April? I told you guys. Like, that's not that interesting to me. Sometimes it's fun, and sometimes if you really feel in the moment, you can plant that flag and make that statement. But I just think I don't think that's actually real discussion. I really don't. So the way I look at things is I'd rather try to break everything down from all the various angles that we have. And I think there's a lot in place for the Texans to succeed. Namely, they have a great defensive head coach, and their OC is like I said this as well. He will most likely within the next couple of years be one of those top OCs that everyone's like, gotta have as a head coach. So I think that is what sets up a CJ Stroud, which is why I think it's a perfect example with the Eagles with having Shane Steichen as the OC. But we saw once he left, Jalen Hurts took a step back, although Jalen Hurts was also definitely injured all last season with his knee, without a doubt. He was hobbled. He could barely even it was just very obvious. So that's why, in terms of at least short-term success with CJ Stroud, I can see the short-term. I don't know long-term yet. I mean, I just think that's impossible to tell based off of one season. But the pieces are in place for them to, at the very least, get to the AFC Championship game. I've definitely not as high on the Ravens as I would have been. I think the Ravens are still a great team, and I'm not real high on the Bills either. And I love the Bills, right? Everyone always yells at me for being, a Josh Allen apologist, but I just don't trust that organization at this point. And I just don't know if Josh Allen's going to be able to keep being able to stay healthy. I just feel like the way they sacrifice his body, he's guaranteed to get an injury. It just has to come eventually. It has to come eventually, whether it's going to be this coming season or the season after. So, the Texans are poised to be able to take advantage of these things. right now, with a Bills and a Ravens team that hasn't been able to get it. Obviously, their biggest obstacle should, in theory, be the Kansas City Chiefs. But again, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm predicting that that's what's going to be. They're going to be in the AFC Championship, and then here we go. To me, I'm very much more of like, we got to at least see we got to see the first few games of the season here.
With all the resources
But the hype, I don't think it's too much hype, though, is what I'm trying to say.
poured into this.
Coach, last year CJ had 4,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. NFL source, former coach, told me, year 1, you, as a QB, you learn what you can do. Year 2, you learn what you can't do. I don't know if you've ever heard that. How do you think that manifests for CJ? Also, coach is the one that told me that.
Well, it's look, as defensive coordinators start to really study you and evaluate your strengths and your weaknesses, it's a copycat league. So whatever weakness you have, you're going to get a boatload of it. And whatever strengths you have, everybody's going to work to take that away. So now you got to see whether or not you can develop a second pitch. And as things get more complicated and as the stakes rise, how well do you respond to that? Last year, they're playing with house money. Nobody expected anything from them. Right. So everything they did was great. This year...
So to me, there's 2 teams that are in very similar buckets that people are understandably super optimistic about in both conferences. And I just feel my antennae say one of them we're going to be like, man, what happened to them? And it's the Packers and the Texans. Yeah, I knew that. Because both of them essentially had rookie quarterbacks.
Right.
Both of them, as of early November, were on no one's radar. You know what I mean? I'm not talking about the quarterbacks, the teams. They were around 500, like that. And then both of them, the quarterbacks and the teams, got red hot at the end. CJ got hurt at the end. He was having a good year throughout. Won a playoff game or multiple playoff games. And now you look around come August, Super Bowl picks, and they're going to be like a trend, both of them, trendy Super Bowl, like, oh, this is my outside of the box. Yeah. And I just think, I know it's kind of a logical fallacy to be like, one of them's not going to reach expectations. But it feels to me like one of them is going to have, from the schedule being tougher to the teams having more tape on the quarterback to some of the young players' progression not being linear, just, stuff.
No, I don't think that's... I listen, you can always give that caveat, of course, right? I mean, it's football. It's the NFL. I mean, like, that's why, the cliche is any given Sunday. But we also have to acknowledge when we see these new players that we may just be witnessing their arrival. Not to mention these young teams, these young players, these young quarterbacks are actually really well supported with younger, hyper-intelligent coaches on both sides of the ball. That's the Packers with Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love. That's the Texans with, CJ Stroud. So I don't see either of these teams failing spectacularly. Do I think that both these teams are just going to, again, both just have a one-way ticket to the Super Bowl? No, not necessarily. I think Jordan Love still has some growing pains to get through. And I also don't want to just automatically crown him because he played, a great, however many games it was. He played a great, last final 7 games or, whatever it exactly was. He was, literally, the top quarterback in the NFL for the, post-Thanksgiving or something. So that's why I'm never shocked in football. I mean, if the Chiefs didn't make the playoffs, I honestly really wouldn't be shocked. Not predicting it, Chiefs fans, so don't freak out. But I just wouldn't be shocked because I've watched enough football to know that literally, anything can happen. So, but I just think that these quarterbacks have arrived. They showed us some really great things. And I believe that they have the coaches that when they face some adversity, not unlike Patrick Mahomes did very early on in his career when he started to, I don't want to say regress, but just wasn't continuing this insane trajectory, it was able to manage. Now, granted, Andy Reid is a completely different quarterback, different coach, but I just believe that these teams, also the way they're constructed, the level of talent they have, because the Giants didn't have that talent. I mean, get out of here. Like what are we talking about here? I think we're seeing, if anything, potential, little baby 49ers with Garoppolo, right? It's just this younger team that's up and coming, except now they're more set at the quarterback position, with a quarterback who can do more, magical things that a Garoppolo could potentially do. So I think the Packers and the Texans are going to be competitive for, again, as long as no bad injuries for years to come, with, realistically with at least the next 3-4 years. I just don't see Jordan Love. Again, I'm not going to tell you that Jordan Love and CJ Stroud are absolutely going to be these top 5 quarterbacks, but that they've already proven to be top 10, top 15 at the lowest. I mean, it's like, what are we talking about here? So that to me automatically puts them up in this in contention. And both quarterbacks have proven to be able to handle the moment of the playoffs. So, again, they haven't succeeded spectacularly, but they also haven't failed spectacularly, and they didn't crumble. Jordan Love could have crumbled in Dallas. He did not. He destroyed them. Okay? CJ Stroud really put a lick on the Cleveland Browns. And he also held his own for the first half. He kept them in the game. The Texans hung around in that first half. Now, like I said before, it didn't end up being particularly close, and then they proved to just be not on their level. But you still have to give credit where credit's deserved. It easily could have gotten out of. They put up a better fight than the Cowboys did against the Packers, so that counts for something. And again, they got better. So if that was where they stood against the Ravens and against the Browns and against some of these more competitive teams, they got better. They got significantly better. So those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of, and I think we're well on our way to doing it. And so let me know in the comments below. Do you think the Texans are getting too much hype? Do you think CJ Stroud will have another great season, or do you think he will regress? Let me know. See you next time.